Thank you, Speaker. I rise in support of this motion and want to thank my Greens colleague, the member for Balmain, Jamie Parker, for raising this very crucial issue in this place today. And while we don't see many koalas in the electorates of Balmain or Newtown, I can say that the amount of response that we get from the community when it comes to making sure that we're doing all that we can to protect koalas and their habitat and our native animals in New South Wales is one of the most overwhelming responses we usually get. The horrific impact of the bushfires on communities across our state last summer are still being felt today, and as this motion originally noted, bushfires across New South Wales have burned more than 5 million hectares of land, destroying landscapes and killing over 1 billion native animals. We can no longer ignore the reality that we are living in a climate emergency, and we cannot wait for the current health pandemic to pass. We need to be able to address the impacts of both to make sure that we are doing all that we can to prevent the harshest and most extreme impacts of both at the same time. The Greens are standing here today because we support this motion, and we recognise and we are calling on the government to immediately protect all core koala hubs identified within boundaries of the proposed Great Koala National Park. I also recognise that this motion is setting out that we note the bushfires, as I have said. We note the remaining unburned habitat across New South Wales is of critical importance to enable native animal populations to recover, and we note the 42 recommendations from the recent parliamentary inquiry chaired by my Greens colleague Kate Fairman in the other place into koalas, and calls on the government to take them very seriously. It is absolutely crucial, and as I said, our electorate office in Newtown has received direct contact from over 160 individual residents living in the electorate of Newtown expressing their concerns about the future of koala populations in New South Wales, and they worry that the next generation will not be able to see koalas in the wild. In fact, the good people in the electorate of Newtown have such a passion and care for the koala populations that, as I said, this is one of the most overwhelming responses we get whenever there are stories about this, in the support that they have for making sure that we are protecting these precious native animals. Their concerns are clearly valid, and after the devastating bushfires last summer, conservation scientists from the World Wildlife Fund list as many as 10,000 koalas lost in the fires, which accounts for 1/3 of the koala population in New South Wales. In the worst affected areas in northern New South Wales, up to 80% of the koala population were killed by bushfires, and I do hope that the inquiry and the recommendations of that inquiry are taken very seriously. I absolutely want to give the Greens 100% commitment that we are doing all that we can in this place and to support people in the community to protect our koala populations. I also would like to acknowledge Greens member for Ballina, Tamara Smith, when it comes to this work. And I note that recently Tamara Smith up in Ballina was able to be part of a formal donation by WWF and koala.com for an infrared camera to assist with local koala rescuers in her area. Explaining how this situation came about, Tamara wrote, 3 years ago, koala whisperer Maria Mathers realised that an infrared camera would allow her and other wildlife rescuers to identify injured animals and monitor them in the wild. She came to me and we approached the Environment Minister, who unfortunately did not provide any assistance. So she reached out to koala.com, and fast forward 18 months, a partnership with WWF donated $22,000 for the camera. And now Maria has, as an incredible human being who works in struggling Ballina koala population on a daily basis, has this camera in her lives and will be able to save koala lives as a result. And that is what we're committed to doing, both locally in our communities and across the state, making sure that we can make sure that koala populations have the time to be enabled to recover in our community from the devastation that we have seen.